Hey, it's Freiberger from Roadkill here, and you're about to watch a show that I've wanted to make for the longest time. It's Junkyard Gold, just exploring amazing junkyards of America with two guys who have even more automotive trivia in their head than I do. We have Steve Magnante from Barrett-Jackson and Tom Taylor from Hot Rod Magazine. Now, what we got going on here is the pilot showdown on MTOD. There's two new shows, this one, Junkyard Gold, and another one that's called Forbidden Drives. What I want you to do is watch both of these, and then if you're signed up for Motor Trend On Demand, you can use our new commenting system. Yes, we finally have commenting. And the pilot that gets the best comments is the one that's gonna become a series, and I want it to be Junkyard Gold. So check it out right now and let us know what you think.
This is Junkyard Gold, the show that scours America's best junkyards.
We're here at Turner's Auto Wrecking in Fresno, California. It's 100 acres of prime vintage American tin.
Let's go exploring.
I'm Tom Taylor, rod and custom designer and the executive editor of Hot Rod Magazine. And this is Steve Magnante, hot rod historian and lover of all things cars. We travel across the country to uncover the forgotten hidden gems of the automotive world. Where others see piles of rusted scrap metal, we see these cars for what they really are, junkyard gold. Turner's is really a fascinating place. I've never seen anything like it. The amount of vintage cars is just incredible. At first glance, most of the cars are just ghosts. But as you walk down the seemingly endless rows of decaying steel, you realize this place holds dreams of buried treasure, junkyard gold. Steve and I see possibilities in every car here, each one of them representing an unfulfilled dream of a pavement-pounding project.
Tom, we got 100 acres of California rust-free metal here. What are your expectations?
Yeah, this is unbelievable. There's so much here. I don't know. I'd just be happy if there was like a S3 Laguna or a RT or Mach 1 Mustang.
You know, to me, I think every single car is the coolest thing it could be, like a Z28 or a Boss 429, until I prove it to not be that thing. I have to explore every single one of them, because you never know. If you walk on by, you're going to walk on by.
Well, let's go see the guy who started all this. Well, we're here with Jerry Turner, and Jerry is the one that started and owns Turner's Wrecking Yard, and he's been here for 57 years.
From the time I was old enough to hardly walk, I just liked to play with Model Ts and Model As, and Pop had the ranch here, and he and I walked around and took out about 5 acres. He says, "This is enough?" I said, "It looks pretty good." Well, before we even got the fence up, we'd outgrown that.
Most of the things here are old. What's the clientele now? I mean, who's coming here and who's buying
Well,
stuff?
we're still selling an awful lot to body shops and everyday working people. Our stuff now is ranging from probably '06 clear back into the '30s.
Yeah.
When I was 7, guy came driving in and my dad bought his Model T for $10. Finally, when I was just turned 9, why he relinquished and said if I bought a battery for it, I could drive it. So me and one of the neighbor kids picked cotton for I think $1 a pound to get $4 to buy a new battery for the Model T.
So what's the secret for the longevity? I mean, this thing's been here for 57 years, you said?
Yeah.
What do you think is the magic here?
I'm stubborn. You know, I wouldn't throw in the towel even if there was reason to, but there hasn't been. 100 hours a week was my work week for 50 years. There's 168 hours in a week. I figured you could sure as hell sleep and eat 68 hours.
Having met the man who started it all, we finally make our way into Turner's warehouse before heading into the yard and letting the hunting begin. Tom, a hangar. You got to think, when you see a hangar, you have to assume that whatever's in there is more valuable than stuff that's left outside.
Absolutely. There's going to be a bunch of bitchin' cars in here.
I see the tail of an airplane, a Piper, or some kind of a...
I don't want airplanes. I want to see cars.
Well, they're all cool. They're all hot rods.
There
eventually.
are cars in here.
Piles of air cleaners. What? Hundreds of air cleaners. Look at this.
We're in air cleaner heaven here.
Yeah. Bel Air.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
A 57 Bel Air, 2-door, probably a fuel. You got to be a fuel injection car, right?
All right, so we'll open this up.
Yeah, small block. All right, no fuelie, that's okay. That's not a 283. The valve covers are actually 320, early 60s,
Yes,
327.
they're later,
covers.
yeah.
Power steering, running off the back of the generator. So that's vintage stuff.
No power brakes.
Manual drums, what do you know? Yeah, you know on Tri-5 Chevys, when the radiator is behind the firewall, it's a V8 car.
Yep.
When it's up in front, a six-banger, because a six-cylinder
Six
is a longer engine.
Come on, 4-speed, come on.
Okay, it's an automatic. That's okay. It's column shifted power glide, 57, bench seat car. Of course, no bucket seats in 1957, but oh man, it's a musty.
It smells like the rats have peed in there a little bit, but
What would you do with this? I'm thinking, I mean, I hate to say it, primer, straight axle, L88, 4-speed, gasser. What do you think?
I think what I'd do is I think I'd clean it up, I'd get the thing running and try to get rid of the rat smell inside, and I'd be good to go.
Yeah.
Maybe I'd lower the front. You'd go up, I'd go down.
I'm with you. It's got a nice even wear from front to back. And
Yeah.
I could almost see, just you're right, hosing this thing off and just letting it be what it is. This is my favorite part of any day. I mean, the junkyard, everything's a Hemi-Cuda until I know it isn't. So we have to explore every car here, and that to me is a thrill. I love it. But we have 100 acres.
This place is huge.
It is.
There's a lot to cover.
I'll take this half.
All right, I'll go this way, and
Hey.
we'll meet back here at the Dusters later on.
You got it. Happy hunting.
All right.
The thing I always find shocking in a junkyard is the fact that every single one of these vehicles started life at a dealership. It was sold new to somebody. A salesman shook a hand, took a signature, and sent the happy new owner on his way. And from there to this moment, the car has gone through all kinds of things that they don't tell us. The problem I have with cars is that they don't talk. It's really up to us to fill in the blanks between the time they were sold new and the time they ended up here in the junkyard. So we have to do that by a little bit of research and just adding up the clues. You just don't know what you're going to find in the junkyard when you look around.
Even on these cars that are like rusting away, the row just keeps going. It's just pretty amazing how much stuff is here. This is a whole row of F-bodies, Firebirds and Camaros. These were the answer to Ford's Mustang. Z28. These were kind of sticker performance cars. Because the engines were so anemic, you know, the way they bolstered them and made them more special were graphics and stickers on them, and then special things like the vents here, the spoilers. They had to compensate somehow, and how they compensated was with these trick little things and graphics to make it special, because what was under the hood was a little weak. A Z28 represented something special, and it represented performance, even if they weren't the most powerful cars by that point. Even in Europe and places like Russia, a Trans Am or a Z28 was like a really big deal. Like if you had a Ferrari and you had a Z28 in Germany or France or something, people would just pass on the Ferrari to go check out the Camaro or the Firebird. They were that big of a deal and they were that special. I know it looks a little raw here, but actually there's hoods all over the place. And I think this sitting down on the ground on tires and wheels, it would look more complete, but it's a really nice car. I think if this was mine, it's gonna need a little bit of body work, but I think I'd put an LS in it with a 6-speed. I think I'd go with the original color, which looks to be a real dark metallic blue. Lower it down a little bit, put maybe some 19s or 20-inch wheels on it, and I'd drive it and enjoy it with the T-tops off all the time. Let's go see what else is here.
You have to know what you're looking at. You have to have a third eye. Mine's right here in my forehead. But when you look through the yard, there's all kinds of cool stuff. Suicide doors on this Lincoln right here. For 1964, Lincoln actually made the back door a little bit longer so people could get in and out more easily. So the subtle differences and upgrades made from year to year on these Lincolns, even these Lincolns have changes from year to year that make them worth looking at. One cool find we found here is a car fit for a president. Yeah, this is a Lincoln Continental convertible. JFK made these cars infamous on that tragic day. But something to keep in mind about these cars, these were built on a unit construction chassis. The flex factor is high, but what Lincoln Mercury engineers did was design in beams under the chassis of this car to stiffen it up. It's a great example of how the junkyard is also a classroom.
Look at all this here. These are all 55, 56, and 57 Chevy fenders and hoods and doors. Look at all that. You know, if you had a four-door, which wasn't worth as much, the front ends are all the same, you know, and in some cases the trunks are all the same. So if you had a crappy old four-door, I mean, you take the front fenders and bumpers off and, you know, that works on everything across the board for that year. Thousands and thousands of dollars worth of stuff. This is what you call a treasure trove here.
It's a place in California called the Imperial Valley. It's well known for its agriculture. Well, this is another Imperial Valley, Junkyard Gold style. This is where dozens of Virgil Exner era Chrysler Imperials have come to either die or be reborn. This one here is a 1963, and the thing I'm digging on this is that it is a combination of the classic styling from the 1920s and 30s, these exposed headlamps, and more modern drivetrain. Now, the lines on this car, of course, penned by Virgil Exner and his staff, were considered to be very streamlined at the time, the deep wraparound windshield, and inside, let's see if we can find the push-button torque light. Yes, there it is. All right, check this out. This is the transmission, right? And here's the park, first gear, second gear, drive, neutral, and reverse. Notice how reverse is red to warn people, don't push R for wreck. I mean, reverse while you're going forward. But this same basic pattern, this device here, in a square form, was used in the Max Wedges and the race Hemis in 62, 3, and 4. You just push these buttons and the torque flight underneath responds. Now, a lot of guys think this is like run by magic or hydraulics. Nope, it's basically a cable that runs from the back of this unit into the torque flight, where it then moves the rooster comb on the valve body. And it moves it to position the valve body in such a way that gives you first, second, third, neutral, or reverse. It's very simple. This basic deal here was also used in fuel funny cars, the push-button torque flights, bulletproof transmissions. On the other end of this torque flight is something pretty cool. Every Imperial built after 1958 had a version of the 413 wedge. And here we see this 1963 version. The same basic engine with different cylinder heads and camshaft and intake was at the root of the Max wedge cars in 1962, 3, and 4. And even the Charger RT, the 446 back, all were based on this big block raised deck Chrysler engine. This one's very stock. I see the original Carter AFB still in place. Of course, the air conditioning unit is still there, and very, very unmolested example. Something kind of cool here. This one has the early pre-64 4-bolt valve covers, which are still in place. The breather cap on the driver's side of the engine is still there. It's almost always missing. So again, great to see this. Now, these engines in Imperials were rated at 340 horsepower, but in Max Wedges were good for as much as 425 horsepower rated. So again, the heart of the Imperial, this 413, was also shared in Dodge's big bore muscle cars throughout the 1960s. It's very cool. This 1963 also demonstrates the final year for this classical style standalone headlamp, again, meant to emulate the Duesenbergs and, yeah, the Imperials of the 1920s and 30s. For 1964, Imperial stylists, well, they went more conservative. These became part of a flatter grille, and the sculpting was eliminated. A more conventional style, but again, you know, every couple of years in Detroit, they sort of have to refresh the line. But 63, final year for this style cycle right here. You gotta remember that the Imperial was Chrysler's bid for Cadillac and Lincoln customers. The price on this car new could be as much as $8,000. In other words, about 4 or 5 Plymouth Valiants. The sad thing is, of all these cars, very few remain. The reason is, these were very popular on the demolition derby circuit. If we look at the back of this car, there's a lot of overhang. What guys would do is buy these cars and drive them backwards in demolition derbies into their opposition. And they munched and crunched and destroyed hundreds of ththese cars through the 60s and 70s when these were little more than gas guzzlers. This kind of car will never be seen again from Detroit. But again, this is an example that's very well preserved. Well, there's a lot more to be seen here. Let's keep looking.
All right, so these we got to come back to. Look at these. These are both Plymouths, early 50s. I think this is a 50 and that's a 51. They hot rodded these things. It is really clean. There's not a dent in it, no rust out. Look, this has even been sitting in the dirt and it's not rusted. That's amazing.
I'm walking along in a forest of trees. Actually, a lot of folks call the steering column in a car the tree. 3 on the tree is a 3-speed manual on the steering column. They arrange them here so that they're available for people who need a new steering column, a tilt column, a new lock cylinder, a new steering wheel. It's all here, ready to be harvested.
This is Cougar Row. We had F-body row, now we've got Cougar Row. Of the ones I've seen, this one looks fairly complete. This is a 67. This is the first year. Ford got their Mustang in 64.5, and Mercury division of Ford said, hey, you know, we want one too. So they got the Cougar in 67. So this is the first year. The 68's got the side marker lights. Only one body style, just a hard top, no convertibles, no fastbacks. This one looks like it's in really nice shape. The paint could possibly be original. The interior looks good. This is a fairly nice car. I don't know exactly why it's here. It's missing a hood and it's missing the taillights, but I've seen taillights on other cars and I've seen hoods. So in fact, there's taillights right there on that one. So underneath, this has about I think a 4-inch longer wheelbase than a Mustang, but short of that, it's all basically the same. And so a lot of the restoration parts that they use for the Mustangs will probably work for this car as well. So really, if this were my car, I'd probably put like a 351 Windsor or preferably a Cleveland engine, maybe put some larger diameter wheels that look like the Cougar wheels, and I'd just buff the thing out and I'd be good to go.
Well, this is it, Tom, the end of the line, the slaughterhouse for cars. Nothing good comes out of this.
The slab o' death.
You got to think about all the cars that this thing has flattened. 55 Chevys, Edsels, probably some Corvettes. It's depressing.
Pretty crude. I'd love to see it work.
You know, these things are available, but like everything else here, it's kind of homespun. This is actually welded up and made out of I-beams and repurposed stuff. Like that engine is a 440 out of some kind of a car they probably ripped apart here. It feeds into a truck differential, homemade car crusher.
So what's this hydraulic ram for?
Looks like that's an extender to even do further harm to the poor, unsuspecting automobile that gets loaded. Think about the GTOs, those beautifully rendered quarter panels, the power dome hood, the ram air hood scoops, all that stuff. This machine is foul and evil. It needs to go.
Think of it this way, it was crushing police cars and like 4-door Mercury Comets and 4-door Corvairs.
I know.
Come on, you know, it is what it is. It's fine.
Yeah, I want to know where the crusher is for the crusher. That's all it is. This may not look like much, but believe me, it's like finding Elvis having lunch with Jim Morrison on top of the Loch Ness Monster. This is a 1955 Kaiser Manhattan. Now, these cars were the brainchild of a fellow named Henry J. Kaiser, who was an industrialist, and during World War II made millions of dollars, billions of dollars constructing Liberty ships. He basically was one of the last independents. You know, of course, the big three, GM, Ford, and Chrysler, but a lot of the independents like Studebaker, American Motors, and Kaiser in the post-war era tried to make a go of it. And this car here is a great example of one of the very last of the Kaisers. We see here, this design is called the Darren Dip. A fellow named Harold Dutch Darren was the designer of these cars, the bodies, and one of his trademarks was this sort of dip down in front at the top of the windshield and the backlight. But again, the use of plastic, clear red plastic, as a body line on the tail lamps of this car is a very interesting touch. And again, Kaiser was such a small company, they couldn't really afford to do much in the way of facelifting with each passing year. So they, instead of coming up with metal quarter panels with fins that were more like the rest of Detroit, they did things like this. Band-Aids, you might call this Band-Aid styling. There it is. This is really, really cool. Now here's the thing, right? Kaiser was such a small company, they couldn't afford to create a V8 engine in the post-World War II era. You know, Cadillac and Oldsmobile 1949, their overhead valve V8s really set the stage. In the rest of Detroit, they got making V8s fast. Well, Kaiser couldn't afford that. So what Kaiser did, they used flathead 6 engines that they bought from industrial engine supplier Continental. But because they only made so much power, Kaiser decided in 53 and 54, and I think 55 as well, to add a supercharger. This is the McCulloch supercharger. It's a belt-driven blower, and that made this engine produce another 20 to 30 horsepower, which actually put it over the edge into a place where it was somewhat competitive with the smaller V8s. But the crazy thing is, the license plates on this car show that it was last registered in 1966. So this car was actually on the road for a shorter period of time than it's been stored here. In the years immediately following World War II, aircraft design inspired automotive design, and inside the Kaiser, the designers of the heater controls took cues from airplane with these interesting knob slider type defroster fan blower control switches right here. You know, a full decade before Detroit got serious about passenger safety, Kaiser came with a standard padded dashboard. In fact, this is a Naugahyde type vinyl with padding, foam padding behind it. And I guess the idea is that, you know, without seat belts, when you hit something from the front, you would tap yourself on the padded dash instead of a steel blade. But again, that's factory stuff right there and pretty advanced for its time. I love the originality inside this car. The original AM radio is still there. It hasn't been hogged out of there and replaced with an 8-track or something like that. It's a very original car inside. I love this, the original hubcaps with the Kaiser logo right there. What a nice original car. I love it. I'd leave it like it is. Well, it's a cool piece, but let's go find out what Tom's up to.
There are so many cars here and so much good stuff, and there's a million things you can do to a car. Somebody should really save this car. It'd be a shame to have it get all cherry-picked.
It's a double-edged sword here. It's a lot of joy and heartache. I mean, I gotta say, seeing most of these cars on this planet for the last couple of days of their lives, it's kind of sad. And a supercharged Kaiser, I never thought I'd see one of those in a junkyard. It blew my mind. We hope you've enjoyed Junkyard Gold. Let us know what you think of the show. And if there's a boneyard in your neck of the woods that we need to come see, let us know. Well, thanks for watching. This is Junkyard Gold, and stay tuned for more. We'll be back.
No, because you're going to smell, and then I'm going to smell it. Don't go in there. Don't go in. God, get out of here. You smell now. It's in your hair.